Hey everybody, Eric Grenier here with Philippe J. Fournier for this week's episode of The Numbers, and it is a beautiful sunny day.
That's right.
Here in Land's End, and how is it over there in Montreal?
Oh, it was a big thunderstorm last night, and it's sunny today, and I can't wait to get on my bike and go biking today. It's going to be nice, but it's nice to be with you this morning, Eric. It's middle July. The rhythm has slowed down a bit. But we still have quite a few polls to dissect and to deconstruct today.
Yeah, we got a few things to talk about. We got some polls from some of the provinces, and we got actually, like you said, a few federal numbers that we'd like to delve into, and maybe talk a little bit about what's going on with the NDP, or as I was once told, never to say, the NDP party. So we're going to talk about those federal polling. So maybe we could start with a bit of a broader look at where the numbers are. And I think that it's worth discussing a little bit what's happening with the Liberals and the Conservatives and the gap between the two of them. Obviously, we're so far from the next election, presumably, that it doesn't really matter that much. But we're now starting to get a bit more of a triangulation of the numbers. Before, we had pretty much just one poll. Abacus would come out a month, and then Nanos would come out, and there'd be differences. We had 4 polls actually come out in the last week or so. Yeah, polls from Main Street, from Abacus, from Nanos, and from Research Co. I'd say there's still a little bit of a divergence between some of these numbers. Yeah. But I think it's safe to say that, on the whole, Conservatives have come down a little bit from the last election, and the Liberals do seem to be doing a bit better.
Liberals are holding. I mean, their worst poll in Abacus was 41, and let's recall, I believe, the last Abacus poll of the election was that 41 or 42. So, I mean, that means it's stable. 47 from Main Street and Research Co. That's a tad high. 47 is a high number, but again, they trust the average. But the thing is, above and beyond what the parties are polling right now, as you said, Eric, we're so far from the next election. For me, what's interesting is the personal numbers of the leaders, especially considering, the NDP doesn't have a leader. We will talk about that in a few minutes. But Mark Carney is still high in a honeymoon, polling well above his own party. And Monsieur Poilievre is struggling to even get to that number that his party gets. For me, that is the most interesting data figures. And Eric, about 2-3 weeks ago, we discussed how, we know that the Nanos tracker fluctuates a lot by its very nature. 250 cases per week, 4-week rolling poll, but it seems to have hit a certain plateau right now. And when we look at I compare from every 4 week samples. Right now it's stable. We have Carney, best prime minister, at 52%, and we have Monsieur Poilievre at 25%. And in that same poll, the Conservatives are at 33%. So he's getting about 2/3 or 3/4 of what his party is getting. For me, this is the most interesting. What do you see in these numbers right now?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that Poilievre's numbers are not what he would like them to be. They're not any better than they were in the campaign, and of course he lost that election, so that is a bit of a problem. And when you look at the numbers overall, you do have a highest number for the Conservatives at 40% in the Abacus poll. Then you got 37 in Research, 38 in Main Street, and 33 in Nanos. And as you said, when you trust that average, you're looking at the high 30s, right? Yeah. And this is a party that got 41%. And we did see a few 40s and 41s at the end of the campaign. So the fact that we are seeing some of these 37s, 38, and 33 does suggest that there has been a little bit of bleeding of Conservative support over the last little while. And just to give the full numbers, we had a 41 from Abacus for the Liberals, 45 for Nanos, 47 in both Main Street and Research, as you said. So we've got gaps anywhere from 12 points to 1 point. But again, that kind of points towards a gap that's probably somewhere around 5 or 6 points. Is it important? Does it matter in terms of the election and all that kind of stuff? No. But it does kind of suggest that at least in these early days, like we're now starting to get to 2.5 months since the election, that people seem to be pretty okay with what the Liberals have been doing so far, or at least they haven't been knocked off of them. But the Conservatives haven't been able to grow, at least, in this post-election period, which is what would normally happen, I would say, after an election result. And you do wonder how much of it is Poilievre's own numbers. Is he dragging the Conservatives down? Is he becoming more of a weight than maybe boosting them? But I'm not sure if it was ever any different. Because even when the Conservatives were ahead by 20 points, Pierre Poilievre's numbers were good relative to Justin Trudeau's.
Yeah.
They weren't the numbers of a party leader who was 20, 25 points ahead in the polls.
No, and I remember that, and I was going to get to that. I'm glad you mentioned it, Eric. I checked the Nanos tracker again. We compare firm to firm and method to method. But the Nanos tracker in December. Remember December, how quiet it was going to be? Oh, finally we're going to have some Christmas vacation, and then everything went down for the Liberals. The average over December for M. Poilievre as best prime minister was 37%, and M. Trudeau was at around 19 and 20. Again, that's a good score, 37%. Marc Carney is at 52, 53 right now. So again, M. Poilievre, has a good score with the Conservative base. He's not polling outside of it. Not polling well outside of it. And I wonder right now, with his by-election campaign, in Battle River Crowfoot, August 18. I wonder whether his campaigning and his speeches will hurt him in the long run. Right? We know the Conservatives do not need to win more seats and more support in Alberta. They have, 34 of 37 seats there. They have 13 out of 14 in Saskatchewan. They need to do better in BC, in Quebec, and Ontario. And I heard him speak at the Calgary Stampede. That was the old Poilievre campaigning for the clicks and the likes and the retweets. That was not the guy trying to win support that he needs to get his party over the hump. So it could be. It's July. It's summer. It's the Calgary Stampede. It's. I've never been. I really want to go eventually. It looks like a lot of fun, but. I'm not sure if he knows how to adjust, and we'll see over the next few months.
I guess you would see that it is a bit of a step-by-step approach. Next thing on the calendar is to win that by-election with enough of a result that it doesn't cause any problems.
Yep.
Then it'll be to get back into the House and reestablish himself as the opposition leader, but as a prime minister in waiting, and then try to organize to make sure that he passes enough of that leadership vote in January. So... But each of those things could cause problems with the other things, right? Because in order to make sure he has a really good result in a riding like Battle River Crowfoot, maybe he has to be a bit more of a more of an Albertan conservative rather than an Ontario conservative.
Yeah, that's right.
And
that's right.
Maybe that saps his polling numbers, which then means he goes into the House in September and he's behind by 10 points on average. His personal numbers are not that great. That could cause some problems going into the end of the session, and then maybe when it comes in January, he's lost some of that momentum. So there is a bit of a calculation here, but I mean, he has to win decently in Battle River Crowfoot, or some people are going to start asking some questions, right?
Oh, absolutely.
I think he might be okay if that number starts with a 7. If it starts with an 8, I think that's good. If it starts with a 6, I don't know. I think that could, let's say he gets 68, 69%. I'm not sure that if people are going to be that impressed with that.
The bar is very high.
Sure.
It's. I mean, getting 65%. There are not that many MPs that get over 65% of vote, but with the context here is so unique, so different. As you mentioned last week, we never had a party leader get into such a safe seat, at any point. So the abacus numbers. Carney, favorable, unfavorable. 49 favorable. 28 unfavorable. That's a plus 21. Poilievre, 39 favorable. 43 unfavorable. That's a minus 4. I mean, minus 4 is not that bad. It's lukewarm. It's okay. It's just that Poilievre's numbers, I mean, if you look at the abacus tracker, it goes up and down. It oscillates around the even mark. You kind of need more. It's just, I don't see how Poilievre gets above 40-45% of it. I mean, he needs. Where else will you find those voters? The NDP is not going any further down. The bloc is not getting any further down. He will have to convert some centrist liberals that have lent their vote to Mr. Carney. So that's a tall order for a man like Poilievre.
Well, one of the interesting things, you said the negative impression is at 28%. In that same poll, the Conservatives have 40% support.
I know, right?
So when you look at the Abacus broke down the net impression for Mark Carney and Pierre Poilievre by different demographic groups. So Carney is a plus 84 among Liberals, which... You know, you'd expect not a lot of Liberals would be unimpressed with Mark Carney right now. But he's minus 38 among Conservative voters. All right, minus 38 sounds bad, right? Minus 38, that's a bad number. You look at Pierre Poilievre. He is minus 65 among Liberals, minus 63 among NDP, and he's plus 77 among Conservatives. Carney is net positive among Liberals, New Democrats by 31 points, and Bloc supporters by 12.
Yeah.
This is why, you know, the Liberals right now are in a good position because they do have some other options, right? Yeah. Whereas with Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives, he doesn't really have that much of an option. That idea that they will have to just make sure that they keep their 41% and hope that the Liberals drop, that is where they seem to be right now. It doesn't seem like they have the ability to get higher than that 41%. And it's just a couple months ago, 41% for any party, we'd be like, wow, right? Absolute victory, crushing the other. But we're in a different world because of the NDP.
Yeah, and the Bloc. I mean, most of all the NDP, but the Bloc falling did help the Liberals. There was, I mean, speaking of the NDP, I mean, I don't know if you want to get into this now, but...
This was my segue. This was my attempted segue.
There you go. So, we discussed briefly the upcoming NDP leadership race. You and I did some over-unders, and we did some drafts that I think I bombed, but we'll see. You never know, right? But we had some polling on the NDP hopefuls. Eric, why don't you say what the top lines were?
Well, first off, just those other polls had the NDP between 6 and 12%, 12% being Nanos, which is the higher one, which is also the one that has the Conservatives lower than everybody else. I imagine there's some relationship between the two of them. Yeah, but absolutely. The polls are suggesting that the NDP has not really made any headway. Their fall to 6% in the election, they haven't really bounced back from it yet.
No.
So it will be up to the new leader whenever they're named, and there's lots of discussion about when that should happen, whether it should be a long race or a short race. They will have a lot of work to do, and we had numbers from Research Co. who tested some potential leadership candidates and asked Canadians their views on them, favorable, unfavorable, and do you not know who they are? So the ones they tested were Ruth Ellen Brousseau, the former Quebec MP, Nathan Cullen, former BC MP. He ran in the 2012 race, and he was a BC cabinet minister before he got defeated in the last election. Leah Gazan, who's the Winnipeg Centre MP right now. Gord Johns, who's an MP for the NDP on Vancouver Island. And Jenny Kwan, who's also an NDP MP out in British Columbia. Heather McPherson, Alberta MP. Then you had Avi Lewis, who is the son of Stephen Lewis, grandson of David Lewis.
One of your picks. One
of my picks. Yep. Kennedy Stewart, former MP, former Vancouver mayor. And Tony McQuail, guy who has actually announced he wants to run. He's a candidate who's run in Huron-Bruce a lot, but is otherwise not a very well-known figure.
I had to Google him. And I'm sorry, Mr. McQuail, I did not know... So you need fresh blood, you need new ideas. That's an interesting development. So
sure, let's call it that.
That's on me.
What is your first reaction to these numbers? Because I had one that is pretty all-encompassing.
Like a lot of Canadians have no idea who these people are. That's my first view. I mean, when we look at the ratios, we have favorable, unfavorable, not sure, and I don't know who that is. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All of them are above 50%. I don't know who that is. And it's okay. I mean, the NDP has never been in power. They're a third party, and they just got crushed. And they had the same leader in Jagmeet Singh for 7 years. So it's okay. It's just that they have a steep hill ahead of him. Whoever ends up running and winning this race. What is your take, Eric?
Yeah, it's that people don't know who they are. Because if you add also the not sure, which to me is the same, right? If you're not sure what you think about this person, you probably don't really know who they are.
Yeah.
And when you look at that, the best score, the lowest score for non-recognition was Jenny Kwan at 68%. Everybody scored between 68 and 73 on not knowing who they were, which also raises a little red flag to me. Because when I see this poll and I see that everybody along in this list did almost identically, their favorable ratings range from 12 to 18, their unfavorable ratings range from 12 to 16, and their non-recognition range from 68 to 73, including this Tony McQuail character, who I'm sure is a great guy, but I also had no idea who he was. I think that if you put you and I in this poll, we'd score somewhere around the same thing.
We get 12%.
I'd get a little higher favorable rating. You'd get a bit of a higher unfavorable. But, it makes me kind of doubt that the numbers actually are all that important. And what that means to me is that when someone announces, let's say Heather McPherson, who some of her supporters have set up a website, they can gather information about potential supporters for her. If she announces tomorrow, most Canadians would be like, oh, sure. I guess I'll find out who this person is. Even in Alberta, 71% of respondents in the poll did not know who she was. And she is probably the highest profile NDP MP, I guess. That's, across the country.
Remaining.
Alexandre Boulris is well known in Quebec. Wow. Jenny Kwan had decent. 49% of British Columbians didn't know who she was. And that was the best kind of regional score I could find. So, my takeaway is that whoever runs kind of can do what they can be whoever they want, because Canadians will not know who they are.
Interesting that in the Research Co report, the tables, you can look at the breakdown by 2025 vote, and there's Liberal, Conservative, and NDP. Obviously, we have to be careful with these columns because
a lot of NDPers.
Well, that's the thing. It's 1,000 sample. It's fine 1,000 sample, but the NDP had 6%. That would mean around 60 people. And I'm looking at Jenny Kwan. You said that one of the most recognized. 60% of NDPers don't know who she is, right? So that's 36 out of 60 people. So, oh man, it's gonna be. I think there's a debate whether the NDP should have a leader in the House, a permanent leader in the House very soon. Or maybe they should do like what the Quebec Liberals have just done, to an extreme, it's true, but wait it out for maybe a few years, try to run with Monsieur Davies as interim leader as long as you can to have a real leadership race with interesting names. Where do you stand on this? Because either argument can be defended.
Well, I got two different points. One is this is still technically a minority government, you can't really assume that the Parliament will last longer than the next 12 months at any point, right? And I mean that if we're still no election by the spring, which is what I imagine to be the case, you can't assume it's going to last for 2 years. So you kind of have to, whenever you set the date of the leadership race, kind of have to do it within a year. I think you'd be risking that you could be at a high tension point in the House of Commons and not have a leader, not being ready to go to an election. That's one consideration. The other one is that, I've seen lots of discussion about how, the party needs to kind of go back to its roots, go to the grassroots, figure out where the party should go, what's the new direction.
Yeah.
Isn't that what the leadership race is going to do?
Yeah.
You can't as a party decide which direction the party should go in, then start a leadership race. You get a bunch of new signups to become members of the party. They want to take it in a different direction. They choose a leader who wants to go in a different direction. Then what happens? Then the party's going to have some more internal tensions about which direction they're supposed to go. It seems to me that the leadership race itself is the time to have those debates. And if it's too long, that means you probably won't have a lot of good candidates because people can't sign up for an 18-month leadership race where they probably have to give up their jobs and all this kind of thing unless they're MPs. And again, you have the unknown wall of an election, which could... most of the time, these parliaments last for 18, 24 months. Mm-hmm. And we're already down near 2.5 months. So, yes, my view is that it shouldn't be very It doesn't need to be in September.
Next spring,
But-
you'd say?
Yeah, it's got to be soon enough.
Yeah.
This is national parties. This isn't it's not a
I know.
provincial party in a majority scenario.
It's true. It's true. It's just that we mean, here's what I think you're right, but I will push back on this on a little bit. This is like a majority right now. Yeah, it's a minority, but the Bloc is not ready to go to an election next year, and neither is the NDP. And the Conservatives will have a leadership race. Leadership review. Leadership
Whoa, you
review.
heard it here
Sorry,
first, folks.
No. Leadership review, and then who knows what happened. I think the Liberals do have some time in front of them. So I'm looking at this list again, and I know we made a draft that we will revisit in time. But if I were to put you at over-under, in this leadership race for the NDP, how many current MPs will be on the first ballot? Over-under 1.5. What would you say?
I think I would probably take the over on that. But if you put it 2.5, I wouldn't.
Monsieur Davies would have to resign his interim post, and I think he was chosen.
I think he took it on the.
Yeah,
or he probably did under the consideration that he wouldn't do it. I'm assuming McPherson will run.
Yeah,
and I'm assuming someone else will run. Maybe Jenny Kwan, maybe Leah Gazan.
Interesting that Ruthelen Brosseau was on this poll. I know she has some name recognition, especially among NDPers, and Boulris wasn't. Right? Boulris has indicated many times he's not interested. I know, but putting Ruthelen Brosseau in there, I don't know. What was her recognition? 59% of NDPers don't know who she is. Yeah, okay, that's going well.
55% of Quebecers
don't know who she is. Is that right?
Yeah.
Oh God, that's painful.
I'm telling you.
Medium voter moment. Absolutely.
Well, honestly, how many times we've talked about it so many times? How many different polls do we need to see to know that the number of politicians that Canadians know and recognize is extremely limited? It's limited to the party leaders and the premiers, and that's kind of it. Everybody else, even high-profile cabinet ministers, largely draw a blank. It's just where things are, right? And the NDP is obviously going to be making this decision within the party, and within the party, I'm sure Heather McPherson and Jenny Kwan and Avi Lewis and Leah Gazan and all these folks, very well known. But that does still limit the NDP's ability to grow if they name a leader who then needs to do the work of actually getting known. Which, maybe that's worth it. Jack Layton wasn't really well known in 2003, but
it's true. It's true.
I mean, it did take 8 years for them to make a breakthrough, but
Its thing is also it's the bad example. Like, Jack Layton needed 4 elections to make a breakthrough. Yeah, but there is such a thing as being too patient with a leader. I think we saw that with Jagmeet Singh, right?
Yeah.
So
Singh got 3, didn't work out so well.
Oh no. So, one more little thing I wanted to add regarding this with Carney. Analysts say he's taking the Liberal Party, towards the center, whatever that means. I'm a numbers guy. I don't know. There should be space. There should be room on the spectrum for the NDP. And so it will be very interesting to see when this leadership race starts, whether they go pragmatic or they go purity test. If they go with purity, they could, that 6%, that 6.3% that the NDP got could be pretty good in hindsight compared to future results. If they go pragmatic, not sure it's going to work, but at least there is room on the left of the spectrum right now federally. I just wonder whether NDP members will see that, but I guess
it's all about whether you win or lose. Tom Mulcair went pragmatic in 2015, got how much did they get in that election? 19%?
19% of the vote, 44 seats, second best result ever.
Considered a disaster, cautionary tale of what not to do. So,
oh God, yep.
There's always so anyway, this will be a recurring theme. I'm very curious to see what the fundraising numbers will be. We'll get them at the end of the month. Now they will include part of the election, but they're going to have raised quite a bit of money. There could be some big issues with the NDP when it comes to their money situation. So a recurring topic for the next little while. All right, provincial polling. We got one from Ontario Palace. Ontario remains to be the most boring place to talk about for the polls. 43 for the PCs, 29 for the Liberals, 21 for the NDP. Pretty much exactly the same thing we've seen for years.
Good score for the NDP, though. I mean, recent Ontario polls had the Ontario NDP suffering from the federal name dragged every NDP down, right? We don't see that, but this is a status quo. Nothing wrong with that poll. It's just that it doesn't bring anything new. Ontarians are still steady as she goes, as we say. So.
Yeah. Okay. But so let's move to Quebec because we got some new polls. Now they kind of came out, if I'm not mistaken, a little while ago. So we didn't have a regular episode last week. So the polls are themselves a little bit dated, but they had pretty clear consensus. This is poll from Lejeune from Main Street. Had 30% to 31 for the PQ, 29 to 28 for the Liberals, 16 to 17 for the CQ, 14 for the Conservatives, and 8 to 9 for Quebec Solidaire.
Yep.
But there's new developments in Quebec.
Yes.
There will be a by-election in Arthabaska on August 11th.
So we knew that Arthabaska was going to have a by-election before the fall. Éric Lefebvre, the MNA of Arthabaska, who won with more than 50% of the vote last time around for the CAQ, resigned to run for the Conservatives in the federal Conservatives in the federal election. Barely won, we should say. He won, but it was a much closer result than we expected. The Liberals did very well in that region,
which it's not really a good Liberal riding. It was very shocking to see how good they did.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We did not expect that. So the Arthabaska by-election will feature two main candidates. Alex Boissonneau for the Parti Québécois, which I thought should be considered as the favorite, but now I'm not sure. And conservative Quebec conservative leader, Éric Duhem, trying to make his entry into the National Assembly. And the CAQ will call this election today. It will be held on August 11th, in the middle of summer, when a lot of people are on vacation, when lots of media is on vacation, before the prime time period of September and October. Eric, what does that tell you? A summer by-election? It's just, let's get it over with and never talk about it again? Maybe?
Yeah, I would imagine so. I mean, there's not a lot of... the last polling we've seen, which was done by the PQ, had the CQ at 3% in this riding. In a riding, as you said, they got over 50%, so no one is expecting much from them. So to put this behind them as quickly as possible, I'm sure that's what they are hoping to do. And it is a pretty high-stakes race. PQ looking to kind of continue its momentum, show that it can win in areas that... it might not normally be expected to win.
Nope.
And then you have the conservative leader who has been able to maintain his party's support since the last election, but not get into the National Assembly. This would be a chance for him to do that. And the PQ candidate's also pretty well known, right? He's like a media commentator. So it's a kind of a high-profile race in the middle of August. I am curious to see how... I mean, we've been talking about this by-election for a long time. They've got high-profile candidates. But will everybody be driving around on the roads around here instead of voting in Arthabaska on August 11th? I guess we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very local thing. I expect it's going to make noise because of whoever wins is a story, right? And the Parti Québécois has not won that riding or this version of the riding since the Lucien Bouchard days. That's been a long time. It's the previous century. And Éric Duhem, I mean, he came close, but he did not win any seats in the last election. And as I said before, a conservative has not been elected under the conservative banner in the National Assembly. It was not even the National Assembly back then, since 1935. So it's been 90 years. For the Parti Québécois, it would confirm their aura of invincibility. Like right now, they're just winning everything. Right? We expect them to win Terrebonne, but they crushed Terrebonne, the by-election. We did not expect them to win in Jean Talon in Quebec City last year, and they did. Or was it 2 years ago? Man, that was 2 years ago.
Yeah, time flies.
It was summer 23. Wow, time flies. But thing is, if Duhem gets in, I wonder how the other parties react to that. Because it would not, I mean, there's no good news for the CAQ, but if Duhem gets in, that means the CAQ cannot even win those former Adekis, right-of-center voters that would have voted for Poilievre, but also voted for, for Monsieur Legault. I have the CAQ right now at 0 seats. 0. I don't see if the polls are accurate right now. I do not see them winning anywhere, and that would break the record of the amount of seats you lose between consecutive elections. I looked it up in Quebec, at least. To go from 90 to 0, if it materializes, that would be the greatest collapse in history in Quebec. So we'll see.
Yeah, well, it's something. Okay, so we'll chat about this again before by-election day. Maybe we'll do some over-unders for the Arthabaska by-election.
Oh,
it'll be something to watch. And with the general election next year, stakes are starting to get a little heated over in Quebec. You said you had a quiz this week.
A very small quiz. We talked about NDP leaderships. How familiar are you with NDP leadership races, my friend?
Not too bad, I think.
Okay.
Not too bad with the leadership races in general.
Want to go backwards in times or forward in time?
I always prefer backwards.
Backwards in time, okay. In 2017, Eric...
Is there a format to this, or are they just trivia questions?
They're just trivia questions.
Okay.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's July. It's not as structured as it is usually. But 4 people were on the first ballot of the leadership race of the NDP. Eric, who were these 4?
They were Jagmeet Singh,
right.
Charlie Angus, Nikki Ashton, and Guy Caron.
And that is correct. Can you name them in order? Of first ballot result? You just did.
Yeah.
You just did. That's 2 points for you. There's nothing that much interesting about that. So Jagmeet Singh won a first ballot with almost 54% of the votes. There's no point system in the NDP. Mm-hmm. It's one vote, one person, one vote. Is it the same thing for provincial NDPs, or is it a national rule? I think it is, right?
It kind of depends. The who had the one most recently?
Well, it was Monsieur Nenshi, right?
Yeah. So in the past, they've had some rules where like union votes got a portion of them and things like that. And they've moved away from that over the last little while. The last Ontario NDP race was just a 1 member, 1 vote. But in the past, it would be that they'd have a certain amount of votes set aside for union members and things like that. So the last time the NDP had a race where there was weighted votes that took into account labor was, I believe, in 2003. So the federal party moved away from that, and the provincial parties, I think, have also moved away from that. But some of them have different things, like what we saw with the Quebec Liberals, votes for young people and this kind of thing. So I don't think it's uniform.
Yeah, good intentions, not always a good idea, though. So anyway, 2012. NDP Leadership Convention. It was in Toronto. It was in the spring, I believe. I remember this one because it was during the student unrest in Quebec, the student strikes in Quebec. There were 7 names on the ballot in the first round. Can you name all 7? Thing is, if you have 6 out of 7, that still give you a point. But can you name the 7 leadership contenders in 2012 for the NDP?
Okay, so there was Tom Mulcair.
That's right.
There was Brian Topp.
That's right.
There was Nathan Cullen.
All right.
There was...
That getting a little trickier here.
Yeah. There was Peggy Nash.
Mm-hmm.
There was Paul Dewar.
Oh, my God.
So I got 5. There was Nikki Ashton.
That's 6.
And there was Martin Singh.
Oh, my God.
And there was Romeo Saganash, who dropped out before the actual voting.
That's exactly right, and he endorsed Mulcair. You almost had them in order of first ballot ranking. Do you know who finished last in the first ballot?
I think last on the first ballot, I think might have been Ashton.
It was Ashton.
Yeah, and then it was Singh.
And then you got them in order. Wow. Okay. Do you remember the final ballot of that race?
I think it was 57-43.
57.2, Eric. How dare you for Mr. Mulcair, and 42.8 for Brian Top.
For Top, yeah.
So okay, that's interesting. All right, let's go back.
I followed that race very closely. I remember.
You were a young rising star in Canadian media at the time, and I remember you.
Thanks.
You were writing for the Globe and Mail. Is that right in 2012?
At the time, yeah. But I was doing most of my stuff at 308.
Pretty good site. I read that.
It was a good name too.
Yeah. It inspired many offsprings. So anyway, the previous race for the NDP was 2003.
Right.
On the first ballot, there were 6 names.
Oh,
now, man, if you remember 5 of them, I will give you gold right away. The names of the 2003 NDP leadership draft. It's only been 20 years, my friend.
Sure.
22 years,
okay.
yeah.
There was Jack Layton.
That's
Wait,
right.
how many did you say there were? 5?
There's 6 on the first ballot,
okay.
but I'll give you the gold for if you have 5 out of 6.
Okay, Jack Layton, Bill Blakey.
That's correct.
There was Joe Comartin.
That is correct.
Pierre Ducasse.
That is good. You have 4.
Oh no, I don't know if I can remember the other 3.
I can give
Other
you.
2.
I can give you a hint. I just need to double check it.
Wait, let me think. Was Lorne Nystrom one of them?
Long Nystrom is one. He finished third, actually, 11%. So you have 5. Oh, can you get the 6th one, who had 1.3% of votes on the only ballot of that race? If you have that, you are a freak.
Oh man.
And I know you are, but in a good way, right?
I do not. I cannot. Tony Martin?
No.
But
you still get gold.
Can I have a
my
clue?
friend. You had 5. Well, okay. That person had 6 Labour votes. Oh yeah, they had Labour votes, huh? That's true. I see that right now. Thing is, I do not know who that person is at all.
Oh, they don't have a Wikipedia page?
It's hard. Let me just let's Google that person. That first hit is the 2003 New Democratic Leadership Convention.
All right, who was it?
Bev Maslow.
Okay.
Does that ring a bell?
I remember that. I think she might have been like the
Vancouver
socialist
South, it says here.
I think she might have been like the socialist candidate from the caucus. Anyway, okay.
1.3%.
I was not going to pull that one out. Now that you mention it, I remember that name. I remember seeing that on the list, but I was never going to get that.
Anyway, we could go further, but it's summer, and that's all I had for today.
But come on, I know the one from 95.
Okay, let's do 95.
Wait,
do you?
Yeah, no, it was Nystrom, McDonough, and Sven.
But there was no race in 95. Wasn't McDonough acclaimed? Hang on.
She finished second on the first ballot, and then Nystrom,
right.
I think, dropped out, and then Sven Robinson. I guess he knew that the Nystrom vote was going to go to McDonough, and he dropped out too. So she finished second and won.
And she won, acclaimed. Yeah. So how do you finish? You finish first on the first ballot, and you say, "Okay, I lost." Wow, that's interesting. I mean, I want to know that story. Anyway, okay. Do you know the 89 then?
How many people were on it in 89?
89, first ballot. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
No. There was Barrett. There was McLaughlin.
That's 2.
Apart from that, I don't know.
That's the top 2.
Yeah, I don't know who else.
Stephen Langdon, Simon de Jong, Howard McCurdy, Ian Waddell, and Roger Lagasse. I don't know. I'm sorry, I don't know these people. I'm sorry if you're listening to this and you think je suis pas culturé ou je ne suis pas cultivé. I see. Anyway, so that's it for today. Thank you, Eric.
Right. I think I did pretty good.
You win gold. Absolutely.
Yay, gold. Do I get anything for any of these medals in the end? I feel like there should be some sort of...
Yeah.
All right, number of the week. How about I go first?
Yep.
So mine is 52%. This was the government approval in the Abacus poll for the Liberal government. So this isn't a personal rating. It's the approval of the government, 52%. What I find interesting about that is that every poll that Abacus has done since the election has had majority government approval among the population, which is something.
Yeah, it is.
Especially in what is, kind of a cranky era. To have over 50% approval for the sitting government is something. Well, we'll see how long they can maintain it. They've only been 50, 51, 53.
Yeah.
Like they're close. Could drop to 49. But it's an interesting number that they... And just when you think about, it's just the line just goes straight up once Trudeau resigned. It's just remarkable. Anyway, 52%.
My number is 42%, and it's regarding the preferred PM tracker from Nanos. 42% was the high that reached Pierre Poilievre in January. It was after M. Trudeau resigned. For most of that fall, he was in the mid to high 30s, reached to the 40s in December, reached 42 on January 10th, and then it went downwards. And I mentioned this because, again, M. Poilievre has a good score among the conservative base, but M. Carney right now is reaching across the aisle. He's reaching voters that didn't vote for him that say, okay, he's fine. And this is the big difference. The Conservatives will have to wonder if Mr. Poilievre can grow the base. They need to grow the base because even though I've heard many times Conservatives says, no, Mr. Poilievre increased the vote by, 2 million votes and 25 more seats. Yeah, but you still lost. And right now, that Liberal coalition across the aisle looks pretty solid too. We know it's not going to last forever. It never does, but looks pretty solid right now. So 42 was my number. It was the high of Pierre Poilievre in that tracker.
And the latest one was 25, right? So it's dropped to 17 points. 1 in 5, roughly 1 in 5 Canadians who only a few months ago thought he was the best person to be prime minister now choose someone else or don't know. Interesting. Okay, well, that'll be it for this week's episode. If you missed it last week, we did a over-under on the Battle River Crowfoot by-election. We went through that by-election with a fine-tooth comb. If you want to listen to that, you can go to thenumberspod.ca to join the Patreon. You can also join on Apple Podcasts. We have subscriptions there. If you join the Patreon, we got ad-free episodes, and we got those special episodes that come out every little while. So it was really interesting. We'll go over how we did after the by-election.
Eventually,
yeah, we'll see who ends up winning that. But thanks very much, Philippe, and enjoy this beautiful weather, and we'll talk next week.
Merci beaucoup, Eric. Merci beaucoup, tout le monde. And that episode featured a name drop of Pinto McBean, so check it out if you can. Have a great week, everyone. Thank you.